You know, we like to travel. Everybody likes to travel for the most part, get out of town and take trips, see family, go on vacation. But in order to do that, you've got to get out on the road. And there's lots of roads that we have to choose from. We're going to talk this morning about the road of choice. As I said, there's a great number of roads that you can take. There are country roads, there are dirt roads, there's gravel roads, there's state roads, there's freeways, and there are highways. And recently I figured out or learned what is the difference between a freeway and a highway. Apparently a highway has to have something like this, where it's a freeway but it's elevated, it's high. And I never thought about that, but it seems pretty reasonable. And so if we are journeying on some trip, what road are we going to choose to take? Well, I would imagine you may have to take several of these different roads depending on where you're going. But it is wonderful to have all these choices. And I would imagine that most of the time we choose the quickest route. I have an app on my phone, you probably do as well, called Waze. And I love this app because it is a GPS mapping application that is all designed to get you to the quickest route. In fact, you can be in mid-route, and if there's a faster route that comes about, boom, it will switch you to take that route. It also will tell you of upcoming hazards and how far up the road that they are. And, not that I need it, but it will tell you when police officers are up on top of or up ahead on your path. But there are some people that don't like that app. Do you know why? Well, because when it tries to take you to the quickest route, sometimes it will take you off the freeways and highways, and it will take you on some of the residential streets. And so all of a sudden, a residential street has all of these travelers coming through their neighborhood. And I can understand people not liking that. But you know what? We want to talk about a particular journey this morning. A journey that every human being is on in their life. And the Bible tells us there's only two roads to choose from. I want you to kind of paint that picture in your mind. There's only two roads in which you can choose to travel. The first road, I'm going to call it the 6-lane highway. The 6-lane highway. It actually is 12 lanes if you include both sides. And you can see, wow, that's a lot of space, that's a lot of room. You obviously know that picture is not taken in Southern California. How do you know that? Well, there's no cars, right? In fact, if you look closely, you've got some cars up here, but it appears they're going this way. And this traffic is going this way. So you can tell that this is probably somewhere in another country. A country where their rights and lefts are reversed. There's a lot of people that like to take the 6-lane highway. And there's a number of reasons for it. Number one, it's the easy path. The shortest distance between two dots or two locations is a straight line, right? And these freeways not only usually are the easiest and the straightest, but they are also the quickest way to go there. And so one of the reasons people use the 6-lane highway, it's the easy path. Number two, it's convenient travel. In most freeways, you just have to get off one exit. You don't have to go very far, and you can fill up for gas. You can find a bite to eat. You can find a night stay at a motel. Sometimes it's just not even getting off the freeway. It's a rest stop. Very convenient to take care of whatever needs you might have as you travel. Other people like this road because, well, it's popular. There's a lot of people on it. We don't much care for that in rush hour traffic. But let's face it, there is something within us that says, hey, when there's a lot of people doing this, when the majority is doing this, somehow it feels right to us. Everyone else is doing it. I want to ask you, have you ever been kind of lost, right? And you're with this crowd and you're kind of like, well, I'm gonna get around all this traffic, and so you go right, and everyone else goes left, and you figure out why no one went right. You're all by yourself, and you're kind of like, wow, I don't see anything, anyone. I don't know how to get back to the main road. I should have stuck with the crowd. There's something within us that's like that, and so a lot of people like this because, well, whether we like to admit it or not, it's the popular way. And a lot of people like to travel on the 6-lane highway because, well, it appears, and I put that in parentheses, I want us to understand, it appears to be the safe road. I mean, because it's so convenient, because it's so popular, if you were ever to break down, especially maybe at nighttime, you have a good chance of finding help or getting help or flagging someone down that would be willing to help, or even to call help, they would be able to easily find you. But if you're on some dirt mountain road, that may not be that safe. It may not be that easy getting help. I remember when I was training with the fire department for being a Code 3 driver. One of the things we had to do is we took our patrol trucks and we had to go and do some off-road mountain driving. And so we went up somewhere out in Ortega Highway, out in the mountains there, the hills out there, and we were driving on this narrow road that in some places you could only fit one vehicle. And let alone what we found out is someone had broken down in the middle of the path and no one could get around them and we were just kind of stuck. And they had to wait for a tow truck to go all the way from the town all the way up the mountain to get around all the traffic and to finally load them up. This is one of the choices that we have in a journey. And people like it because it's easy, it's convenient, it's popular, and it appears safe. Here's the other choice. I want to contrast this. How do you like that road? How do you like that pathway? This is an actual road, and it is called El Camino de la Muerte. Now, I probably don't need to translate that for you, but for Daniel, I probably do. Daniel, that means the way or the road of death, okay? It has a name. Anyone ever heard of this? El Camino de la Muerte? It takes you from the city of La Paz Daniel, that means the peace in Spanish, which is a bigger city, all the way to, and I'm gonna butcher this, Coriaco, Bolivia. So it's in the country of Bolivia, and it takes you from La Paz to Coriaco. It is the most dangerous road in the world. And if you want to travel on it, you will be on it for 43 miles. This is one of your choices in the journey of life. I want you to just take a look at some pictures of El Camino de la Muerta. You can kind of get a feel of what the road is all about. Imagine, if you will, when you get heavy rain, that rain's going to slide right down that hill, steep hill. In fact, you can see right here is you kind of lost some of the terrain and kind of wonder how stable that part of the road is. I want you to notice this as well. This is the closest you get to anything what we might call a guardrail. And as you notice, not only cars, but buses and trucks travel this road every single day. That looks like fun, doesn't it? There are parts of the road that are wide enough to where you could get two. So someone has to back up. 43 miles long. El Camino de la Muerta. It was built back in 1930 by prisoners of war. Most of the road is no wider than 10 and a half feet. So I'm 6 foot, though the last time I went to the doctor, she said I was 6'1". I don't know how that happened. So it's a little bit taller than me. Like I said, there are no guardrails. At some places, if you were to fall off the side, the drop would be 1 mile long. Have you made your choice yet? 300 travelers die each year traveling on this road. One vehicle every 2 weeks falls off the side, usually ending in death. Here is the most, what do you want to call it? The biggest accident on the road was a bus containing 100 passengers that fell off the road, killing all 100 passengers. And yet people travel this road every single day. In the journey of life, you have two choices. Turn with me, if you would, now to Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7, beginning in verse 13, where Jesus says these words. And may I emphasize, this is Jesus saying this. I did not write this. I did not say this. You did not write this. You did not say this. Our church did not write this or say this. This is Jesus, the Son of God. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. I find it interesting in the very next verse, after talking about these two ways of travel, The very next verse, he says, beware of the false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. I think Jesus is telling us these false prophets have something to do with the choice that people make as to which road to take. People don't like this passage in Matthew chapter 7. It goes against what most people like to believe in Jesus. But we can't take away these words. Jesus said there are two roads, two ways, two pathways. And it's a very common thing in the Bible to talk about life and the way we live life as transportation, as a path we take, as a way we go. In fact, in Ephesians, Paul says, walk in a manner worthy of your calling. He's not talking about literal walking. He's talking about the way that you live your life, the path that you choose on the journey of life. Jesus says, not many find El Camino de la Muerta. In fact, is there anyone here by raise of hand who ever heard of this before I brought it up? Doesn't look like one person. Someone has to tell you about it. Someone has to tell you there's this road. But you can imagine a lot of people won't want to take El Camino de la Muerta because it's so dangerous. It's so challenging. But brothers and sisters in Christ, I think you understand what we're talking about here. Jesus says when it comes to the journey of life, you want to take the dangerous. You want to take the challenging. You want to take El Camino de la Muerta. That's the path you want to choose. He explains to us why people take the 6-lane highway. We already discussed those things. But a lot of people like the 6-lane highway because it's easy. It's convenient. It appears to be safer. But the reason we tell people about El Camino de Muerta, because we stand and preach and we tell our friends and our neighbors about this road, is because Jesus says it really is the only choice for the journey of life. But I want us to understand, not many will find it. Just like you have never heard of this road before until what? I told you about it. You've got to go and tell others, or they may never find it. As I said, the Bible uses this metaphor of pathways and roads and travel. In fact, Jesus in Matthew 7 isn't really saying anything new. He is really using the language from what has been spoken before. For example, in Isaiah 35, verse 8, 9, and 10, Isaiah talks about this period of time that's coming in which God is not going to punish Israel, but He's going to bless them. And look at the way He describes it. He says it's a highway, and a highway will be there. A roadway. And it will be called the highway of holiness. That sounds better than El Camino de la Muerta, doesn't it? The unclean will not travel on it, but it will be for him who walks that way. The fools will not wander on it. No lion will be there. nor will any vicious beast go up on it. These will not be found there, but the redeemed will walk there. Verse 10, the ransom of the Lord will return and come with joyful shouting to Zion, with everlasting joy upon their heads. They will find gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. But there's only one road that leads to that. The highway of holiness. El Camino de la Muerte. Or Jeremiah, in Jeremiah 6 verse 16, thus says the Lord, stand by the ways and see and ask for the ancient paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and you shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. You see, the people in Jeremiah's day, they wanted the 6-lane highway. But Jeremiah said, for the journey of life, you need to seek the ancient path. In Proverbs 15, verse 9, the way of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord. Put it this way, the way of righteousness. In Proverbs 14, verse 12, there is a way which seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. You see, that's the ironic twist of all this. That we think by El Camino de Muerte, that's much more dangerous. That's going to lead to death. Oh yeah, you can fall off that road. That's why we need to be sober. And we need to be in control. And we need to be focused. But the ironic twist is the way of death is that 6-lane highway. And there's not a day that goes by that on some highway there is not someone that perishes on that 6-lane highway. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Or in the song, Psalm 1, verse 1, the very first words of the very first song. How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the paths of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. And dropping down to verse 6, for the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Jesus is not saying anything new. He's repeating the words of the Old Testament. And these are the same words that after the time of Jesus were spoken as well. That through Christ there is a way, a narrow way, and He leads the path. He is the shepherd leading the lambs, leading the sheep to the quiet waters and the green pastures. But that way is El Camino de la Muerte. And so as we close this morning, someone might ask this question, why? Why do people travel on this road every single day? Why do people take the challenging, the risky way of El Camino de Muerte? Well, I'm going to tell you why people do it. Number one, people do it because it's filled with beauty. There was pictures I didn't show you of the beauty that you can see from the cliffs of this road. Why do people choose the narrow way, the dangerous way, the challenging way, the more difficult way? Well, isn't it the same reason? The Christian life is a beautiful life. It is filled with beautiful scenes of love and joy and care and forgiveness and mercy and on and on and on. Am I telling you that the narrow way is the easy physical life? No. But here's the thing. Even those on the 6-lane highway go through the struggles of living in this imperfect world. Peter told his Christians that even those who suffer for doing what is wrong are going to suffer. But when we suffer for doing what is right, that finds favor in God. There is all sorts of beauty in the Christian life, not in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense. And even physically, there can be great benefits through knowing God and His promises. The knowledge that He gives us of what this world is all about and what really is important. And that convenience and popularity, what everyone else is doing, isn't the right sign of being on the right path. And so a lot of people travel this narrow way, the narrow, dangerous road, because, well, one, it's beautiful. And it's unfortunate that many people never get to see the beauty of this pathway. And if you don't show them the beauty of it, they may never see it. There isn't a whole lot of beauty a lot of times on the highways. You ever take Highway 10 through West Texas? There's not much to see there. Another reason why people travel this narrow road is the challenge and risk is worth the reward. In fact, I didn't show you, but several pictures of a group of bike riders love to take this because what? It's challenging. It's something out of the ordinary. There's a certain reward to be able to keep that focus and to travel and to stay on the narrow way without falling off. Many people travel this because it's worth the reward. And I want to tell you, the Christian life is not an easy life. As I've said many times in the recent past, we are not called to a high standard of living. We are called to the highest standard of living. You can't get any higher than to live as Christ lived. But it is going to be well worth the reward. And there's a third reason. Probably the most popular reason that people travel this road. And that is this. At the end of that 43-mile trek is this village. People take that road because they have loved ones and friends. And there's all sorts of wonderful things that await them in this village. And they travel that dangerous road to get to this village, which is called heaven. Now, it actually isn't called heaven, it's called Koryaku. But wouldn't that have been neat if that translated into heaven? That would have been really cool. But for us, that's what this village represents. Why do we travel El Camino de la Muerta? Why do we travel the highway of holiness? Why do we travel the narrow way where there are few, where there's risk, where people don't respect you for taking that, where you look foolish? It's because at the end of that road, if we keep our sobriety and we keep our focus and we keep looking to the footsteps of Jesus with endurance, this magnificent home we call heaven will be ours for eternity. When you really look at these two roads side by side, you easily can see where someone can be blinded and deceived thinking, there's no way I want to go on that narrow way. But when you look at it with an open heart, with realism, with truth, with the reality of where that takes you, you see there really is only one road to choose for the journey of life. And if we can help you through baptism, immersing you in water for the forgiveness of sins, to begin a relationship with Jesus Christ or return to Him, to get back on this path. Maybe you've fallen off. It doesn't have to end in mortality. You can get back on that road and start traveling once again. If we can help you do that, why don't you let that be known as together we stand and as we sing.